everyone, it's me Jasmine again, and welcome to the best day of my life. Yes, I'm speaking English again. I really liked your comments and your feedback in my last video. Thank you so much. I will try to make more videos in Japanese. You guys gave me like courage to do so, but it took so much time just like making the subtitles and writing it in Japanese, checking the kanji. I did a lot of hiragana because I couldn't remember all the kanji, but I will definitely try to make more videos in Japanese, and I would like to make more videos in Spanish too, and like try other languages as well. But yeah, just like making the subtitles is difficult, especially if my main audience, they don't speak that language, but I will do my best. But for this video, I have to speak in English because it's something that I wanted to talk more in depth about. So just recently, I was watching a video by Vegan Nomad Chick. She made a video called How I See the US After Living in Europe for 2.5 years. And I really liked this video, and I could agree with just about everything that she said, but I wanted to make a similar video to her video because I wanted to give you guys a different perspective, or more like my personal experience, how I viewed the US when I was living in the US versus how I view the US now, and how my opinion, my perspective has changed meeting so many people who have never been to the US. Let's start. This may be a kind of a touchy subject, especially because most of my audience is American, but I feel like in the US I was brought up Christian, and so like I learned about Jesus, I learned about God, about the Bible. But one thing, and I think I mentioned it in like a lessons learned video a long time ago, was that going to church, I realized that the majority of the people who were around me, when I would ask a question, they would tell me like because the Bible says so, or they would say like read the Bible. So I read the Bible, and then I realized that the majority of the people who went to church with me and that like would tell me to read the Bible, they had never read the Bible cover to cover. So I feel like I can only speak from my experience in the US, but I feel like there's so many religious people in the US who have never even read their religious text cover to cover, and don't even realize like how their perspective changes the meaning of what is written. And I feel like in the US, whether a person classifies themselves as Christian or not, and there's so many types of Christianity in the US, but whether they classify themselves as Christian or not, I feel like many, I'm sorry guys, like I'm not talking about like you, but I'm just saying this is my experience. But I feel like there have been many Christians who, or like there are people in the US who don't even classify themselves as Christians, but they like follow the Bible or parts of the Bible. But they'll read something and then they'll like criticize other people for going against it, or they'll say like they'll say that like what another person is doing, maybe it's being gay or something like that, is against the Bible just because they know of like one passage in the Bible. So I feel like people in the US are more religious with like no cause to be religious. I think education plays, this is like a whole nother video, but I think education plays into this fact. Yeah, but meanwhile, going to Europe and just meeting people from different countries, nowhere do I ever see people as like crazy religious as in the US. I met a Japanese person and I was telling them about like Christianity. They didn't really know much about being a Christian, and it felt like I felt kind of crazy talking about like talking about like this guy in the sky, and yeah, like he did all this stuff, and then Jesus came, and then he rose from the dead. It made me think, like, if someone was to come to me and say like, Jasmine, join my religion. Okay, what's your religion about? Okay, there's this guy with 3 eyes, he's blue, and he makes like purple water or something like that. I don't know. Yeah, and he did like all these things. If a person, like honestly, if a person came up to you telling you all this stuff, would you believe that it's facts? But I think because many Americans, similar to myself, we are told this since we were very young, that we start to believe it willy-nilly, and we don't really question like about God and about like Jesus. And like personally, I do believe that there is a God. It's a long video, guys. I'm not gonna go down that path. But personally, I do believe that there is like a higher being, and whether or not Jesus Christ existed or not, I believe in his teachings. But I feel like just saying that can trigger so many religious Americans. But meanwhile, I feel like more Europeans or people from different countries, they would be more understanding and in realizing that, oh, this is just her perspective. And I feel like people who I've met internationally, and I haven't met any like really religious people, and I think this is just my experience, but I have, even like statistically, like it shows that religion is dying, especially in Europe. But yeah, many people, if they're going to be religious, they keep it to themselves and they don't like judge other people from their religion, at least openly. But in the US, it's very vocal, very vocal. If you're doing something against someone's religion, they're going to say it, and they're going to say you're going to hell. Yeah, but I admire this, how people, and I think in the Bible it even says to keep it in your closet, keep it in your pants, guys. But yeah, I really like how it seems like other like countries are more open about the concept of like, I'm just gonna keep this to myself, you know? To be fair, Morocco was kind of religious too, for Islam. Religious for Islam, it seems kind of strange. But yeah, I'm only comparing it to like the majority of the countries that I've been to, and countries that are more like westernized. I've made a few videos about this, about being black and being a black traveler in Japan. But one thing that I've noticed is that in the US, I was always aware that I was black. And it seemed like every day there was always something that reminded me that I was black. And I think the most common way that I was reminded that I was black was from jokes. So like white people, black people, like any race, ethnicity, whatever, would make jokes about my being black. Like, oh, don't touch that, or like, oh, where did the pen go? Oh, Jasmine, or like, you know, like just small jokes. And I think if someone was to call people out in the US about like these jokes, because I think it's really common, then people would get offended. It's just like, you have no sense of humor, it's just a joke. But I think these jokes play a toll on people as a whole, because like if you keep hearing these jokes, it's just like, oh, like maybe you're not the stereotypical like black person, but like most black people are like this. I don't know, maybe I'm overanalyzing it. But yeah, in the US, I feel like I was always reminded that I was black from white people, black people, like any ethnicity of people. But meanwhile, when I started traveling, I started feeling, especially here in Japan, I feel like I'm just a person, and that it doesn't really matter the color of my skin. Especially here in Japan, I think it matters more that I'm not Japanese. But and many other countries that I've been to, when people would ask me, like, I'm not saying that people wouldn't comment about my being black, but I'm saying when people would make a comment about me being black, it's more out of pure ignorance. Versus in the US, if they're not making a joke about like me being black, if they ask me something like why black people do this, why black people do that, I feel like there's a sense of like the stereotype they have already in their mind, that is concrete in their mind, and they just want me to confirm that fact. And if I say something to negate that fact, then they're going to start like not arguing with me, but kind of like debating with me, but like, oh, but this black person, blah, 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 and this black person. Yeah, but when I talk to Europeans, or when I'm like here in Japan, or like like any other person that's not American, or that has never been to the US, that's the best one, that has never been to the US, the questions that I get are just like out of pure ignorance, and they're not offensive at all, and it's okay. But meanwhile, like overall, when I'm like not in the US, I just feel like I'm a normal person, and yeah, whether people treat me differently because of my skin color, that's not my concern. I don't care, because I'm just like living my life. But overall in my life, Jasmine's life, I just feel like just a normal person. When I was in the US, and all of the people around me too, many of my friends who still work in the US, like we would work so much, work so hard. If we had extra time, if we had hours of time like the same day every week, oh, we could be using that time to get another part-time job or something like that. or something to make money. When I was in the US, I felt like I was really stressed, starting from when I not like my first few jobs, but when I started getting into like the corporate world and everything. I started making more money, but I realized that I didn't have that much time to spend my money. And I think this is the mindset. Well, I think like many Americans, they do this. Like, we will fill up any time with making more money, but we don't have time to spend the money, or time to enjoy the money, or time to spend the money with friends or anything. It's more like we'll use that money to get quick fixes for like food because we don't have time to cook for our food. But yeah, we'll like try to buy something quickly to try to save us time so that we can go back to work. Growing up in the US, it was very typical for like the people I was surrounded by when I was working, and when I was like growing up watching my parents work and watching adults work, they have a set lunch time and you have to go back to work after an hour, after 30 minutes. It is set. Like, you can't really negotiate with your boss. And so I was used to this whole notion that work was like, you can't negotiate with work. That's work. Yeah, but going to France, really open, and not just France. When I would talk to other Europeans too, it seemed like they were more laid back, and they're in this life to experience life. So they'll go on vacations. I had my very first family vacation when I was in university. I was a freshman in university, and we went to Ocean City, Maryland. So I'm from Maryland, but we just went to like the other side of Maryland for our family vacation. And I'm not complaining because I had a blast. I had an amazing time, but it was alien to me to go on family vacations. Like, I never even considered that our family would go on vacations. And like, I used to go to Florida with my grandparents, and my mom would go too. Every summer we would go to like Disneyland, Orlando. So that's a family vacation. But I'm talking about like my immediate family, my mom, my dad, my sisters, my brother. We had never gone on a family vacation before. So it was really like, it was unheard of. I never even fathomed that we could, or that we should take a family vacation. It didn't occur to me that it was against the norm to not go on family vacations, because to me, my reality growing up is that all adults must work, and like they can't experience things with their families, with their kids, because they must work. Meanwhile, when I like started traveling more, and I went to like I would meet French people, German people, and German people are really known for working too, working hard. They always allotted time for like vacation time and travel time. So that is one thing that my view has drastically changed, because now even now, like, I feel like I'm a workaholic, even in Japan, but I feel like I now know that I should take a vacation. Before, I didn't even know that I should take a vacation. I thought that I always had to work, I always had to be there at this time, and I couldn't negotiate my hours. But now I am fully aware that I can negotiate my hours, and if a job doesn't want to negotiate with me my hours, then maybe that job's not for me. I think most Americans, they are workaholics, and they don't see that they can take off of work, and that they should take off of work, because just to spend time with their family and to have like rest time and to recuperate. The adults in my life growing up, when they would have a day off, even my friends now, when they would have a day off, it's not like, oh yes, I have a day off. It's more like the first thing that I would hear is that I would have made this amount of money if I went into work today, or they would be talking about work. So I think getting out of the US was really good for my mental health, because I now know that I should take a breather and smell the flowers. The next thing I noticed is waste. So in the US, I think like when I would turn on the TV, even in school, we would learn about recycling, but I don't feel like it was very stressed. Maybe it has changed. But yeah, I would see commercials about how, I remember when DC started charging for plastic bags, and I think they stopped offering plastic bags, I think. Yeah, and I was really happy when I was learning about this and learning in university, like about sustainable development and how to, how to manage our waste. However, when I left the US and I realized how much further as a nation we have to go, I was dumbfounded. So here in Japan, well, I guess Japan is kind of an unfair society or country to compare the US to. But Japan is like, whew, like in the future when it comes to recycling, it's really difficult to find trash cans out in the streets because you're encouraged to take your trash home and recycle it yourself. And if you do not recycle something correctly, then the trash people, they won't take your trash. And the bags are plastic, and each bag has a type, like it has a color of like what is supposed to be in that bag. So there's like green. It depends on like where you live, so the colors may be different, but like for where I live, green is like for burnable stuff, and then there's like orange for like pet bottles. And even in the US, I didn't even know what PET was. But PET is like a type of recyclable plastic. And also in Peru they have, in Peru I first learned about PET bottles, by the way, PET. But in Peru as well, they recycle more. I feel like it's more than the US. And I remember I was like learning about recycling like by myself. And I think it's like something new. So it's not like something that all of Peru has. But there is like, it's called a plastic bank in the US. And I think maybe in California there's one too. And they take plastic bags and they melt them down. I don't think it's only plastic bags, but they melt down the plastic and then they're able to make 3D models out of the plastic. But that was amazing. And not only that, in Peru, it's pretty uncommon to have a washing machine and a dryer. So most countries that I've been to, like France, and I can't really remember the UK because I was so young. Spain, I didn't really see much. Morocco, I didn't really see anything, but I wasn't really looking. But in most countries that I've been to, they don't have dryers. And when I first went to, I think, France, I think it was, when I was in France and I realized like why is she's line drying her clothes, I was kind of amazed because I'm just like, that's so old school. But you can just hang out your clothes to dry outside and it's free and it saves you money. In Peru, they have like, it's a separate business to wash your clothes, like just standardly wash your clothes. In the US, like everyone has their own washing machine and drying machine. That was kind of like why. Also regarding waste, in Morocco, there was a whole section of Marrakesh devoted to recoloring clothes. I was shocked, guys. But when your clothes start getting old and they start fading, there is a portion of the city in Marrakesh, and I think maybe in other parts of Morocco as well, where there are businesses that will recolor your jeans, recolor your shirts, but they reuse their clothes. I feel like in the US, we like first of all, many of us buy like really cheap clothes, but even if you buy cheap things, like we get rid of them very quickly, like very quickly. And this is something that Vegan Nomad Chick also said, like in the US, we get rid of our stuff very quickly versus what I have seen and what she has also said she has seen is that in other countries they will reuse and patch up, and yeah, I think this is another reason why we have so much waste in the US, I feel. The next thing Vegan Nomad Chick also mentioned is regarding space. So in the US, and this is like, when you're coming from the US, like you don't really think about it that much, but in the US, there is so much space, so much space. Everything is big. Everything is big, like the houses are big, the roads are big, everything is big. However, when I left the US, when I started traveling, I noticed that more people live in apartments and like the roads are smaller. And I don't know if it's because of history that the roads are smaller in Europe because like they've been that has been like civilized, I guess, longer. But yeah, everything is big in the US, and I feel like there's negative connotation with people who live in small spaces. Like if a family lives in an apartment versus living in a house. I feel like if a family lives in a house, they're doing well, and if they live in a really big house, they're like, they have money or something like that. But if a family lives in an apartment, or if someone lives in an apartment, it looks kind of, my image, I think, like, to me, I feel like there's a negative just connotation regarding people who live in apartments, and the American dream is to get a big house and to have many rooms and a lawn and everything. But here in Japan especially, even in Morocco, like people had their own like living areas, but it was still like pretty small, and they had like a like a terrace, like maybe it's a terrace, like a garden area. So it's a little bit different, but still I feel like the living spaces in other countries are much smaller compared to the US. In the US, I feel like there is a fear of the unknown, and maybe our geographic location plays into this, because how the US is, you have Canada up north, and like they speak English, and they're kind of like very similar to like the US. And then there's Mexico, but like many people just go to Mexico for vacation. They don't really interact with Mexican people. Yeah, so but I feel like there's a fear of the unknown in the US. So when I first told people that I'm learning Japanese, when I was very young, I was like maybe 7 or 8 when I first started learning Japanese, maybe even 9, I don't remember. But yeah, what I would get is people would tell me like how racist Japanese people were, and like, why are you learning Japanese? Or even when I was dating a Russian guy, like people were telling me like how like you can't trust Russians, and I'm just like, well, I think he's pretty trustworthy. Or like when I wanted to go, like I wanted to travel to the UK, my mom, like I'm so grateful to my mom who like made it happen for me. But yeah, people were telling me how like scary it must be as a child going. I was like, what, 12 maybe? I went to England, Iceland, and Wales that trip. And yeah, people were telling me like how scary it's going to be. But I feel like in the US, there are so many people always talking about how scary things are. And I feel like back in the US, I used to make up fears so I can fit in. Yes, I used to do that. Many people I know, like they're afraid of, this is my sister though, afraid of bridges, or afraid of airplanes, or like afraid of like just like various things. Travel, if you're going to a different country, oh, like they're going to be racist, they're going to be sexist, or they have, I feel like many Americans have preconceived notions of other countries, but those preconceived notions, I have no idea where they're coming from, because usually those people had never been to that country before, or they don't know anyone from that country, and if they know people from that country, they don't associate them with that country, so they don't see like how people of that country can be nice or whatever. I don't know. But I feel like in the US, just like the vegan nomad chick said, I feel like they can be really fearful. Yeah, like I used to, like I feel like in the US, if you're going to do something that most people don't know about, they're going to like try to share their fear with you, just like, aren't you afraid of the airplane? Or aren't you afraid, like, what if like someone steals something from you? What if? However, I will say, just like the US, Japan is kind of similar. Recently, I feel like many Japanese people don't want to travel because they're afraid that other countries aren't safe, including the US. So there's that. And I think, again, maybe it's because of how the two countries, the US and Japan, are geographically. It's not just fears. I feel like in the US, we have like a soul culture, you know? Like, if something is going to be scary, it has to be so scary, or it's going to be like so bad, you know? And I feel like we, what is the word? We exaggerate how bad something is. For example, I have allergies, and back in the US, like my allergies are pretty bad, okay? Like, I don't know if I'm just saying that now, but yeah, I would like almost like brag to people like how bad my allergies are, or like what did I like made up so many fears just to fit in with my friends. I can't remember all of them because they were lies. They were lies. Like I lied about like my fears. People in Europe are surrounded by different cultures and different languages, different foods all the time. So I think maybe that's why they're so like not necessarily fearful to the unknown. The last thing that I noticed, and it really bothers me because I'm really big on this, is education. So I personally think that education is the key to all of the world's problems, education and action. But let's start with the US. So growing up, I was taught that the US is number one. Grew up saying the Pledge of Allegiance every single day in school. And yeah, like I never really questioned about what I was being taught because yeah, I feel like how we're taught in the US, it's basically you just read something and you spit it out. There are like some critical thinking pieces that you have to do on tests, but I feel like the critical thinking is like critical thinking within this box. And I feel like, yeah, I was constantly taught like how the US is number one and how like many people want to be like America, many people want to be American, many people want to come to America. But going abroad, living in Japan, Peru, going to Morocco, Spain, France, Iceland, going to these places and talking to people from these countries and just like people from other countries along the way, I realized that many other people think like America kind of bullies other countries, and that no, like people are kind of happy in their own countries as well. Like America is not number one, like we're taught this. I feel like America, like as kids, we are taught so much propaganda, and I think other countries have it as well, but I think like the US really exceeds other countries in how much propaganda is crammed down our throats at a young age. Like what other country says the Pledge of Allegiance? Like for kids? Yeah, but I feel like education-wise, I feel like the education in the US has deteriorated drastically, and when I'm talking to another American and maybe we're having a debate or we have just a disagreement or something, I feel like I can't really trust the sources that they tell me how they got their information. So if I do check, and oftentimes I do check like where they received information, it'll be from like some propaganda news site, Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not not a credible site, guys. Or it'll be like just a think piece or like some like random video that some random person made. Hi! But yeah, they'll take that as fact. Meanwhile, if I'm talking to especially like a European person, if they're telling me how they got to their opinion or like their sources, I feel like I can trust their sources more because when I check, it'll be like an analysis, or maybe it's going to be like a study, and it has like information from both sides. And yeah, I feel like their sources will be more credible, and I like how, and this isn't everyone, but just my experience, most of the people who I talk to, if they're going to be Europeans, I feel like they don't get so emotional when I'm talking to them if I'm going against what they believe. Like, yeah, sometimes it happens, but overall, when I'm talking to people from different countries, even Japanese people, when I'm talking to them, my experience, they don't really put in that much input, so I just say what I mean, and they're just like, oh, okay. But when I'm talking to Europeans, I don't feel like they get as triggered as Americans do. Like, I feel like many Americans take what I say, if it's against what they believe, they're going to take it personally and get angry and feel like I attack them personally, when I know I'm just attacking your argument, what you said. So that's pretty much what I think about the US right now. Again, like maybe my perspective is going to change if you give me another year. Thank you so much for watching. If you travel a lot, or if you've been to or lived in any other countries, and if you have similar experiences, I would really love to know like what you thought of your home country versus what you think of it now. Please let me know in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. Please do not forget to subscribe, follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and I will see you guys again next time. Bye!